This conference will now be recorded.
Amanda Reed,
Present.
Stacia Donahue,
Yep, Stacy from Harvard, I'm here.
and Christopher Monroe.
Present.
And myself, Roger Hoyt. Did I miss anyone? Okay. So that gives us 9 communities represented. Okay, can we show the agenda? Okay. So next item is the minutes of September 7th. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes of September 7th? Taking that as no comments, I'll hear a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes of September 7th, 2023 on page.
And I get a second for that?
Jeff Tillotson, second.
Second. Okay, so I'll do a roll call. Guy Corpizero,
Abstain.
Laura Schifrin,
Yes.
Kristen Newman,
Abstain?
Alan Pease,
Yes.
Jeff Tillotson,
Jeff Tillotson, abstain.
Amanda Reed,
Aye.
Stacia Donahue,
Aye.
Christopher Monroe,
Monroe, aye.
and myself, Roger Hoyt, aye. Minutes are approved as usual. They can be edited in the future if anyone has any comments. Okay, next item on the agenda is the cash schedule for September 23rd. Would our treasurer or Linda like to read the cash schedule?
I can do it, Bob Schwartz.
Oh, Bob, okay, I'm gonna add you on the list. Were you here at the beginning?
No, I just came on.
Okay.
Hmm.
All right, please.
The Montechusett Regional Planning Commission cash schedule 9/1 to 9/30/2023. Opening balance August 31, 2023. Checking enterprise bank balance $93,743.38. Outstanding checks as of 8/31, $3,900. MRPC debit card account $1,375.54. Mass Municipal Depository Trust $234,824.13. Mass Municipal Depository Trust Other Post-Employment Benefits $75,110.34. Environmental Protection Agency Program Income Account Enterprise $298,512.41. Montechusett Enterprise Center Incorporated $21,462.08. Total opening balance is $721,127.88. Cash receipts, and I'll just give you which includes transfers. I just give you a total for brevity is $114,348.25. Total cash on hand before this warrant was $835,476.13, less the amount of this warrant, $149,759.74. Balance after this warrant is $685,716.39. The total on deposit is $685,716.39. And that's the report.
I move to accept the report, subject to audit, Guy Corbisero.
Second, Jeff Tillotson.
Okay, I'll do a roll call. Guy Corbizero,
Aye.
Laura Schifrin,
Aye.
Kristen Newman,
Aye.
Alan Pease,
Aye.
Jeff Tillotson,
Jeff Tillotson, aye.
Amanda Reed,
Aye.
Stacia Donahue,
Aye.
Christopher Monroe, myself, Roger Hoyt, aye. Bob Schwartz,
Aye.
motion carries. Okay, Jason, can you go back to the agenda? Thank you. Hold on here. All right, any general announcements and questions for guests? Do we have Sean with us tonight? There
Roger,
he is.
I believe he's popping in. I think you just said there he is. So there's Sean. We're also expecting Director of the Rural Policy Commission, Ann Goby, but I think this is a perfect time to turn it back to you, Roger, and back to Sean. Thank you.
Okay, I'll introduce our guest speaker, Sean Suhosky, Rural Policy Advisor Commission. Go ahead, Sean.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you for joining
Can
us.
you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hello? Okay, thanks. So I apologize. I'm not familiar with the with this app, so I'm a little late joining you. My apologies. And I don't know, I have a document I'd like to share that just really briefly, if I might, Glenn. I don't know if that's something I can do. Oh,
So
look at
that's
that.
up to Jason, our IT guy. So Jason, can you make that work for Sean? Jason's working on it.
The modern day equivalent of Vertigo.
Look at Ann's coming in too.
I made you a presenter, Sean, so there should be a little button that's like it looks like a monitor, probably with a line through it. It's gray.
Oh, yeah.
You could share either your screen or a particular application using that, but I got to just stop mine real quick. Hold on one second.
Okay. Thanks.
Oh no, I think I'm sorry. I'm done sharing. You can go ahead and try it now.
Oh boy, I'm a modern day manager, right? Except when it comes to technology. All right, so I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Thanks everybody for hanging around. I see some familiar faces, and let's see if it will allow me to find that window. Tell me if you can see that.
I do not see anything.
You do not see anything. Okay. All right, because I can see a very short PowerPoint on my end, but let's see if oh golly.
Did you hit that button that looks like it says screen and it looks like a monitor with a line through it?
I did, and everything bounced around, and now it looks like it wants
there we go. You're up.
Okay. Wow. All right.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Ann would get a chuckle that I was late for a virtual meeting, I'm sure, but
You were
anyway,
just
I
on
only
time,
have a-
perfect timing.
I only have a couple of slides, just high level, because I didn't want you to look at my face for the whole presentation, but I am available to answer questions. So what I'd like to start with is, although I know some of you, I used to be fairly involved throughout the Montezut Regional Planning Commission when I worked in Gardner and in Air. And now I've been in Athol as a town manager for about 10 years, and we are a member community of MRPC at the furthest western reach of your district. And interestingly, the great majority of your communities in the MRPC service area are deemed rural communities. You might not think Fitchburg, Leominster, Gardner, but if you look throughout the district, Glenn will have the exact number, but most communities in the MRPC would qualify as rural. And so as a representative to the Rural Policy Advisory Commission and from the Montezut region, I'll just give you a quick overview. This, believe it or not, this commission, which maybe you never heard of, was created initially by legislation in 2015. And the group really did do a lot of field work, listening sessions throughout the Commonwealth. This took place in 2017, 2018. And I joined it in 2019 when the RPAC issued its first report to the legislature, which really is under the mission to enhance the economic vitality of rural communities. And that would be communities with a population density of less than 500 persons per square mile. That's what the legislature established. Almost half the communities in the entire Commonwealth would qualify. And if you look at the little logo of the RPAC on the screen, the areas in blue are rural. And you'll see it's mostly central Western Mass with pockets on the Cape and Islands and a little area up in northeastern Mass as well. So the initial plan was issued in 2019. And essentially that document is about 108 pages. And I could do it page by page tonight, but I don't feel that would be incredibly helpful. But what I do have, and when you get this link emailed to you, it is active and you can access that entire plan online. And it really involved the input, dozens and dozens of stakeholder groups, regional planning commissions, including MRPC across the Commonwealth, economic development groups, housing groups, elderly groups, public health groups, you name it. And a lot of work went into that document, and it was presented at the State House in October of 2019. We looked at areas surrounding infrastructure, economy, community needs, governance, unique issues that really impact small town government, and also looking at climate resiliency and as it may relate to rural communities going forward. But throughout the 2019 plan, since that inception, and in the legislative priorities that have issued every year since then from the RPAC, the overarching goal was to create an Office of Rural Policy. And the reason is, and great credit to Glenn's counterpart, Linda Dunleavy, who's the executive director for Franklin Council of Governments, the FRCOG, Franklin Regional Council of Governments, the FRCOG. She also serves as the chair of the Rural Policy Advisory Commission, does a lot of our work and even hosts documents on their website. So long story short, there's many recommendations that are unique to rural communities. And it's so different than city governance in that issues that present us, they're on a scale that might get overlooked in Boston, maybe previously, but are so important in a small town or in a rural district. And I may talk about a few of those in a moment. Since the 2019 report, even during COVID, we met remotely, we did some legislative priorities, and then ramped up again in 2022 with a couple of reports. The links will be there for you. A nice overview from August of 22 on the Policy Commission generally, and a document promoting equitable distribution of the ARPA federal aid funds to ensure rural communities did not miss out. And I will say this, and many times the federal government is so large and the bureaucracy so big that you can't get to, when you try to implement things at a micro level, there are so many requirements. You know, the small towns, many of you on this call, your town administrator or your select board, to comply with all of these federal grant and aid requirements, Glenn and his staff will tell you, it is very burdensome, can be incredibly cumbersome. But with respect to the ARPA, the RPAC, Rural Policy Advisory Commission, the Small Town Administrators of Massachusetts, which I chaired for 3 terms, many other Mass Municipal Association, many municipal officials advocated through our state legislators to our federal counterparts. We need to make ARPA something that smaller towns can take advantage of, not get hung up on endless audits in a paper trail. And well, lo and behold, I got to tell you, Congressman McGovern and his counterparts in Washington, they established that $10 million threshold under which smaller communities could designate their ARPA funds in a single category for reporting purposes. This alleviated the burden of us hiring a new staff person, which would have taken from that money, and a whole myriad of compliance issues. So I'm going a little bit off topic, but that's an example of the advocacy that can be done for small towns that the RPAC tries to do. SAM, the Rural Legislative Caucus, which former Senator Goby was very active in. We really do have some strong voices to try to break through the noise on Beacon Hill. So we're grateful for that. More recently in 2023, the RPAC continued its work. And again, now Director of Rural Affairs Goby was involved. There were listening sessions that the Healy Driscoll administration and Economic Development Secretary Yvonne Howe put on throughout the Commonwealth to hear perspectives from all communities in all parts of the state. And there was a focus group on rural issues that was held as well. And RPAC had a session in June of 23 to look at what types of economic development tools might assist smaller towns and make for a more equitable, or at least, you know, on scale, more equitable to our view, distribution of assets. And some of the short-term fixes, and I'll answer questions if there are any, create a rural equivalent to the Gateway Cities program that would devote funding and resources to rural areas and incentivize people to live, work, and relocate to rural communities. There's population growth in some sectors of the Commonwealth, even modestly so in my community of Athol. But if you look at Western Massachusetts, we're suffering an outmigration, a loss of population, and that's leaving jobs unfilled, which slows the economy. It's harmful to everybody. And there are other recommendations, a list of them, but I'm not going to read them now, but I will answer questions if you have any. Most recently in September, just last month, the RPAC authored a letter, and I'll circulate it through Glenn to the commissioners here at MRPC, to the new Housing Secretary, Edward Augustus, as the Commonwealth looks to develop a rural housing, I wish it was a rural housing, a housing bond bill. And we're encouraging them to focus on rural needs as part of that housing bond bill. And as an example, I'm just using Athol as an example for this. We have a project that's in the final throes of the funding and subsidies that are needed to redevelop these couple old elementary schools into affordable housing. And these schools are the old brick school buildings that you have in any town, Massachusetts from the 1900s to 1920s. And they're built like fortresses, and they are not easy to renovate because they're so densely constructed. And to meet current codes, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and thus a lot of subsidy. So we have a project that would create 53 units of housing, and I'm not here to promote the project, but by way of example, if we can get the same subsidies that are handed out, hand over fist to Lawrence and Lowell and Boston and Springfield and Worcester, if we could get on scale that same subsidy in Athol, that 53 units represents a full 1% of our entire housing stock. We'd increase our affordable housing percentage by 1%. In Boston, you'd have to have a project with over 2,800 units in one project. And I think when you look at the scale of things, or in Lawrence, a single project with 420 units. So we're just looking for equity and looking at the scale of impact. A lot can go a long way in rural areas. Lastly, I'm happy to talk more about the housing strategies if you'd like. But lastly, the RPAC, and I'm very pleased, has forged a great working alliance. I think it already existed when Ann Goby was a state senator. A lot of her district was rural, and probably one of the biggest districts in the Commonwealth for a senator. And as a member of the Rural Legislative Caucus, her now Senator Paul Mark, and others were a great partner to the RPAC. So this last slide just kind of circles back to the earlier one. The overarching goal from 2019 forward was, how do we create an Office of Rural Policy? And we tried submitting it through budget, begging the former administration. We tried different techniques to try to get some leverage on that. And yet, after Governor Healy was elected, and she had spent time in listening sessions as well, and to her credit, she created the first ever Director of Rural Affairs position. And this, I can't take credit. The RPAC really can't take credit for that, but that was an issue that we pushed on consistently because it's needed. We need to lend a larger voice to these small communities like Athol or like Ashburnham, Lunenburg, Lancaster, the Hubbardston, all the communities in your service area. And Ann is just the right person to do that. And in May 2023, Governor Healy announced her as the first ever Director of Rural Affairs for the Commonwealth. And I know it's probably a big change. Doesn't this sound like I'm just leading into really who our featured guest is? And let me see if I can stop sharing my screen. And hopefully I'll be able to see you again and you can see each other. And Jason will tell me if I need to do something else because I have a blank screen, but I'll keep talking. We're very pleased to have Ann Goby as part of this team and leading our charge for rural equity in the Commonwealth. And I'll stick around for questions if I can find you on my screen again and turn it over. Hopefully I'll hear somebody talking soon.
Hey, Sean, I'm
I
here.
don't know why you can't see yourself or anybody else, but you're there.
I am back. Now I can see everybody and I see the agenda again. So
There you go.
okay. Hopefully you didn't just have 10 minutes of silence and a blank screen.
Loud and clear, Sean.
Nope, we heard you. Yep.
Welcome, Ann.
Hello, and I'm driving. I was trying to find a decent place to pull over, but I'm coming from Pittsfield, coming through the lovely communities of Cummington. So I actually have at least I have a signal, so that's not bad. Thank you very much. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, we hear you fine.
Oh, okay.
Hear you great, Ann.
All right. No, thank you very much, Sean. And you can take credit for making sure that the governor heard loud and clear how important it is to at least start the creation of this position. And I've said it before, it's great to be the first in this role, but I don't want to be the last. And it's very important to me to have an opportunity to work with such great partners like MRPC has been. So I, first of all, want to say thank you because of the support that you gave me when I was in the legislature, and now the support that I'm going to continue to need, and to really kind of lean on you and the good work that you do. As Sean mentioned, there are definitely some priorities. The trying to come up with something that looks like what the state did for gateway cities is absolutely one of the number one issues that I'm trying to deal with right now. And a lot of that is just trying to come up with a workable definition. Depending on what definition you use for rural, and the Rural Health Office of Massachusetts uses one definition. If you go to USDA, they have a different definition. The definition that's being used by my office under economic development is under 7,000 people or less than 500 people per square mile. I'm not sure. I just pulled over, so is that better? Less than 500 people per square mile. With that definition, we have 181 rural communities in Massachusetts. Now, of those 181, obviously many of them are in the western part of the state, but a good number are in your catchment area. A lot up in north, I don't know, sorry about that. A lot up in the North Essex area, and then a bunch down by the Cape. So, but there are different needs. Just to give you an example, Dover is a rural community, but they also are the wealthiest community in the state of Massachusetts. And I'm not saying that they may not need some assistance. However, they don't need the level of assistance, when Sean was mentioning in Athol, or, I just came through Goshen and some of these other small communities. It's a very different scale. And so part of the job that I have is to try to figure out what is the best way to get state help to these communities. And the other part of it is, we don't want the state to tell Athol what Athol should be doing. We want Sean, we want the folks in that community to say, this is where we need state help. This is where we need the state to get the heck out of our way. And these are some ideas that we have to make that happen. And there are some things, and this isn't being a Pollyanna, there is a lot of low-hanging fruit. There are things that we can do to make some differences in our rural communities very quickly. Sean had mentioned about trying to do things with making the change in the definition. That might take a little bit more, but it's not going to be an impossible slog. The other part is Chapter 90. I've heard over and over again, and you folks know, trying to get things with communities who are trying to get on the tip, they have to come up with that 25% match. That can be extremely difficult. Isn't there a way that we can try to help out, especially these smaller communities, to get to that, so that they can get on the tip, to get to where they need to be? Changes in Chapter 90 itself would be wonderful, where if we were able to use more road miles than some of the other criteria that is used. If we just use road miles for our rural communities, they would see on average about a 60% increase in their Chapter 90 formula. So there are things that can be tweaked, but I can't do it alone. I've really relied very heavily on RPAC. I'm relying on the regional commissions to make sure, that we're getting the information that I need, that I can advocate and make sure that the governor and lieutenant governor are hearing it. The lieutenant governor, as you know, is also doing some municipal meetings now. The one closest in our area, I believe, is going to be in West Boylston. And I want to say, you probably already know this because I know that you were helpful in putting these together. I think that's on the 26th or 27th of the month. And I'm hoping that there'll be good turnout at that. And I'm also hoping that the lieutenant governor is going to hear some of the priority issues that Sean has already illustrated. And again, I'm happy to take any questions as well. And I appreciate you having me here.
Might I add one thing to what not Senator, Director Goby said.
You just
the-
call me Ann. It's easier, Sean.
Oh, thanks. All right, thank you. When Ann talks about Chapter 90, right, that affects every corner of the Commonwealth. And I remember I testified before the Joint Committee on Transportation about this, and about, whether there's a better, you do a new the only time you can do a new formula is if there's new money, because otherwise somebody's going to lose, right? Because you're just pushing the money around in different piles. But if we can find that rising tide where there can be more funds allocated to transportation, we can look at a formula adjustment. And think about this, and I get it, but Athol and Orange, we have two bridges, both built, in the FDR's administration after the floods in the late 1930s there. And they're both falling apart at the same time, a couple $1 million each, right? Well, they only serve, it's a rural area of the two towns. And so the traffic count, is 500 vehicles a day when they're open. So how do we compete with something that's got, 10,000 vehicle trips a day, yet the bridge costs the same to build? And it's just as important to get the ambulance to those 100 families. And so there's a cost in rural areas. Same with education and regional transportation, which, Ann, you worked on so hard to increase that for regional school districts. There's just more geography, and we just have to recognize that somehow.
Yeah, and this isn't probably as much of an issue in Central Mass and North Central Mass, but I'll give you one other one that I didn't realize was such a major issue, but it definitely is on the western rural communities, and it has to do with EMS, where they can't get like a third party to even want to come in to service those areas. So you get a town, a very small town, and it's costing them a large amount of money just to be able to have some sort of regional ambulance service that they can do, where you get to these large cities, and because the call volume is so great, it doesn't cost a town like Wellesley anything for ambulance service. So, it's the cost that small towns have to incur, and these are quality of life issues, and literally life and death issues. And I don't think that some of that has really got the attention it should. So there's an awful lot. I think we know the problems. Now it's to get to the solutions.
Are there any other questions?
I have a question, Christopher Monroe from Hubbardston. For me, rural, pretty much every question about rural equity in Hubbardston starts and ends with the watershed. Because ultimately we have 50% of our town that can never be developed into ordinary revenue generating property because it's locked up in the watershed. And there's certainly been improvements to the pilot program over the last couple of years, and we're grateful for it. But to us, we see it as a problem that the state potentially has 100% control over, and we feel like we're kind of stuck because we end up in a place where we also have an information asymmetry issue. There's only so much that we have for internal resources that aren't volunteers, so there's only so far and so hard we can push on the issue. So hopefully this is something that we can work with your office in the future on, because I actually had an opportunity to speak to Lieutenant Governor at a CMRPC function, and my first question to her was, have you ever heard of the Ware River watershed? And the answer to that question was no. And then her ultimate response was, you should go talk to Ann Goby about this. So
yeah. Well,
so
and
here we
yeah,
are.
right, and Chris, that at least with the MWR aid payments, you're assured, you know what you're going to get money from them. However, the value of water continues to climb. And the state auditor has come out, and I don't know if you've had a chance to see the report that she has done about Pilot. You know, why should land in Hubbardston, the same amount of land, be less value than land in Plymouth? It makes no sense. And so there's absolutely, you know, when you talk about equity and the equity issues, that is absolutely a big part of it. So Pilot's going to be a big discussion. There's no question.
Yeah, it's certainly good to hear. The follow-up to that is the issue with information asymmetry. And I have a good practical example on that based upon the last grant list that went out. So when Hubbardston being a small town, we essentially had 4 people at that. And the 4 people we had look was the town administrator, our DPW director, and then 2 volunteers, because that's all we have. So to even go through and try to break down a grant list and try to figure out what we could be eligible for and where we could match, it's just not a place where we have resources to go after resources. And it kind of puts us on a treadmill where it's challenging to push through that. And credit to the regional folks for finding the opportunities and getting them out to us, but ultimately the fact that we're so squeezed tight on the budget, it makes it hard for us to do anything about it or make any of those long-term progressive plans. So we're looking forward to getting support on that kind of stuff in the future.
Yeah, so one positive on that. Right now, I'm an office of 1. However, because the grants, as you mentioned, are such a big thing, and even though the rural small town grants that come through the community, the One Stop, it's about a $5 million. This last grant cycle, there were 17 awards made, a little over $5 million. There is going to be someone hired. In fact, I start interviewing next week. I've had about 30 people that have applied for this manager position, and that person's sole job is going to be working specifically on the rural small town grants. And so that you'll have somebody to be able to talk with, to help you with the process, and then if you are awarded, can follow that process all the way through. So at least in that particular grant situation, we hope to be more helpful to you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, quick question to Ann Goby, if I may.
Certainly.
Ann, it's Glenn at MRPC. How are you?
Hey, Glenn. Good, thanks.
Do you know offhand how many people are in the office of the Gateway Cities office?
I don't know if they necessarily have a Gateway Cities office. I know what you're saying, but they receive a ton of money. Right. Yeah.
I mean, if you're an office of 1 and the Gateway Cities were designated 5+ years ago, and
right,
you know, and that's always been the bane of the Gateway Cities program and the non-Gateway Cities designees. I know, you know, Gardner's mayor kind of flipping out on the issue years ago, where it's like, look, I got the same issues that you identified in the Gateway Cities program, but because of this arbitrary threshold of population or whatever they chose, you know, so many other communities. We know the story. I won't belabor it, but you know, I'm sorry you're an office of 1, but you're, you know, may I say, you're a very powerful office of 1. You always have been, and you know, you're doing. I know you're doing, and will continue to do great things. And we appreciate your time this evening. You know, and you know, and Director Goby, if there's something that we can do, please, you know, you've got my cell phone, you've got my email.
Yeah, no, I
if
know,
you need
Glenn,
some
no,
stuff from us, you know, pepper me with
Yes.
ideas, and we'll filter them out to the towns or the towns. We need to help you help us.
Right, and I thank you for that, because yeah, I definitely will be leaning on you, especially as an economic development plan is going to be coming out hopefully by the end of the year. And once that plan comes out, I think there's going to be more opportunities, but there's going to be, unfortunately, probably more work for you guys when that happens too, but in a good way.
Bring it on.
Right. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you, Ann.
All right.
Come back soon.
All right. Have a good rest of the night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Sean, Can you hang on for 5 minutes?
Sure.
I'm curious, the next item on the agenda, I'm curious about your input from a municipal government is on this next point. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Any questions for Sean before we move on to the next? Okay. We'll move on to administrative matters. And Glenn, is this you?
Yes, sir, it is. Under 6.1, artificial intelligence or AI use policy. So we are working on a policy as 20 minutes ago when, thank you, Christopher Monroe, for seeing this on the agenda that was coming up, and Christopher sent me a use policy or two, and I quickly emailed you back to thank you, Christopher. I haven't obviously read those, but I will tonight or tomorrow. But thank you for sending those. And that's what's going on. There are a lot of there's a lot of information swirling about artificial intelligence, and what I want to talk about tonight is a couple of things. There's textual based artificial intelligence. I think we've all heard the phrase Chat GPT and other apps online. And then there is image generated AI or AI generated imagery that you can find online also. But what I did a few
I think we've lost your sound, Glenn.
Yeah, I was just about to ask if that was me or looks like he's coming back.
words. So while Jason does that, I attended a American Planning Association free webinar yesterday for about an hour and a half on AI generated imagery. They didn't touch on the textual based stuff, but why is this important? Well, that's buried in my report. So if you forget everything I say, here's the bottom line. We as planners, I mean, we're using AI anyway. If we download Grammarly and we put it on our email or Word and attach it, that's AI. If we have an email and an Outlook email, there are suggested responses to an email that's AI generated. So we're using it even though I sent out this memo about prohibiting use. What I'm prohibiting is saying, hey, planners, please don't use Chat GIP to write a report. It's a tool, let's have a use policy, let's be careful and use it with appropriate ethics and so on and so forth. But what we're going to do is use this carefully in the future. Jason, did you pull up the report for the my AI report? We can replace the agenda. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we lost you there for a few seconds, so I wasn't sure what.
Sorry about that. You know, we just went over to T-Mobile, and it's wireless. And I tell you, the next meeting I'm plugging into that new device. Sorry, my apologies for that. And I'll be very brief. This is going to be about 2 minutes. So planners are starting to use it. Planners in school are starting to be taught AI, both the textual based and the AI generative. They're being taught in the colleges and universities right now. They will become officials, they will become employees. And one good use of AI generated imagery is for brainstorming. Just go down, if you could, to the image, please. University of Waterloo was one of the speakers, a professor at University of Waterloo yesterday. University of Waterloo is in, oh, sure, yeah, right, Glenn. It's in Canada, I think it's in Toronto, or it's just west of Toronto. Bottom line is, very good speaker. Pan down some more if you can go to the next visual, bullets and visual, please, Jason, that'd be great. So visual brainstorming, they're teaching the students how to basically do what we all do already in public forums, getting public input, charretting, and so on and so forth. So they're teaching the students, and yes, I'm sure consultants and RPAs and counties and city planning offices are using this stuff already, but we want to use it properly. So we can go down to the next image and bullets, please. It's just below there, Jason. But we want to make it very careful that the visual AI, it complements skills, it doesn't replace skills, and that's been my concern. We want to make sure that people aren't writing an affordable housing plan by generating on Chat GPT, and they're done in a half hour, when an affordable housing plan can take 3 to 6 months to write. You know, don't phone this stuff in. In my volunteer world, you know, I have a colleague who's a professor at Fitchburg State, and 2 of his students turned in papers last semester that were generated on Chat GPT, and he gave them both Fs. So that's not good. The kids, you know, they're already phoning this in, and we certainly can't phone in stuff to our clients. Jason, could you go down to the next one, please? There are ethics and legality. You can't generate something using a visual-based AI generated program and say, you know, and you can copyright it. That's not allowed, but you have to cite your source. That's basically what the slide says. Next one, please, Jason. There are court cases already where people are using AI generative image-based apps, and they are saying it's their own, and they're infringing on the use in the terms of licenses of DALL-E 3 and others. Bing has an imagery program also. There are biases and prejudices in AI. These images, it says encoding bias, and you see 3. Could you pan down just slightly, Jason? I want to see those 3. There are 12 pictures there. There are 3 sets of 4. So this generative AI imagery was developed by someone as an example. When someone typed in the words, "Show me an example of a smart person." Now, of the 12 images generated, they are mostly middle-aged to senior Caucasian people, only one female, mostly with white hair, and you'll notice some Albert Einstein lookalikes there in the lower right-hand corner. So this is why I prohibited the use. We have to be careful with this stuff. If you put in a prompt to generate an image of an urban landscape or a street landscape or flooding or something, we have to be careful. The computer tools are fascinating. They're wonderful. They will get better over time. But this is electronic version of using a marker on a whiteboard or a permanent marker on a piece of paper in a charrette, and you're drawing what a downtown landscape looks like. And you're trying to get, you know, in town center Hubbardston, what do you want the downtown to look like? Some of the imagery may be great, some might not. Next one, please, Jason. And we're rounding out to the end. So there's much emerging policy guidance. Again, Christopher, thank you for sending those examples. Pardon me. But we're going to look at all of these and try to come up with a tight policy that's going to be 2 to 3 pages. It's not going to be a 50-page document, but it's going to protect us and our planners from using it incorrectly. We want to use it correctly. It's a great tool used in the right hands. Next image, please. Pardon me, folks. This is an example of what's in the quote. Streetscape in the Northeast United States was generated on the left, and on the right there's a variation. So this is the power of generative AI for imagery. Next one, please. These can be very helpful. I can't wait till we use these regularly. This is an example of the young lady presenting in the top right corner yesterday. Said she's an avid bicyclist, and she works in Washington, D.C., and she was on a bike path. On the image on the left is the photo she took, and then she uploaded the image into a DALL-E 3 or another Bing Imagery, another AI generative image program, and then she added in some shade trees, a bench, a person running ahead of her, and some signage and some other stuff. So you can use existing photos in this also, which is if you want to take a picture of the town center of Hubbardston and say, okay, now, you know, we have other imagery and more shade trees, maybe a curb, maybe it's a boulevard, then you can use this. It's a fantastic tool, but we want to use it properly. Next image, please. And I think we are getting definitely to the end of this presentation. So we are not going to put GIS out of business. This is an example in the middle of maps that were generated by ChatGPT. And it generated a map showing the flood inundation for climate change, sea level rise planning in the eastern Massachusetts area, but there were errors. There were many errors that were pointed out to us yesterday. Next image, Jason, we're almost at the end. And these are just 3 programs that they talked about. DALL-E 3 on the left, Midjourney in the middle, Bing Image Generator. If you have interest in this topic, you can choose those. There are dozens or hundreds of online programs. Some cost money, some are free. And Jason, are we at the end yet? Because I bet everybody wants us to be over. I just thought this was kind of cute, and this drives my point home. A frog in a car was put into an AI generative image program, and those 2 images popped out. Well, there was a frog on a car seat in a car, and then the other one put a cartoon image of a frog in a car. And this is my point. You know, it's going to AI generative image apps are going to get better, but we have to be careful of their use. Jason, is that the last one? Or is there anything else after that on that document? I think that's the last one.
That's the last.
Point made, point taken. We're going to use, we're just going to create a proper policy. I just want to give people an idea of, well, what are we talking about AI? So when we talk about plans, which are text-based, we want to be careful. We want to be ethical. We want to cite our sources, and we want to be careful about imagery. But these can be great. I attended an Ashburnham Charette public forum about master planning last week with 5 or 6 planning and development staff, and this can be a great tool for a meeting probably in the next master plan process, but we're not there yet. So we'll create a policy. It'll come back. We'll use good resources that Christopher gave us and others that are online, and we'll do a policy. It'll go under attorney review. Then we'll come in with a 90-95% draft for your input. We'll give you probably 30 days to look it over, and then ideally I want to just get this done by winter. Ideally by the January meeting is my target, maybe February, but it's kind of a good cold early winter project to get done right after the holidays. But we're doing the research now. Thank you for your time. If there's any questions, fine. If not, well, Sean, I asked you to hang around. I do appreciate the 5 or 10 minutes. I don't know if this is hitting municipal government. You're very involved with the town administrators. I don't know if AI's, hitting your subject matter on your agendas for town administrators or not, but certainly where RPAs and planners are basically consultants and we have to do the right thing. We want to make sure we use tools correctly, whether it's Google or Bing or GIS or whatever. But my question to you, Sean, is this even an issue for town administration?
I can't speak for the field generally, but I can tell you personally, I'm curious about, there's a suggestion that there be a regulation that content would have to be labeled artificial intelligence, or sad we have to label it, maybe it's an oxymoron, human intelligence, so that we know, what the source of material is.
We're getting the
I'm
same
gonna follow
counsel
this
from the
issue,
American.
so I really don't have anything helpful to add to the conversation, but I think we got to keep our eye on this, because all those deep fakes, the stuff that can be created with your voice, your likeness, what's the whole strike in Hollywood about, right?
Right.
It's about AI, and it's
Right.
about having, an actor's likeness or an actress's likeness and then their voice, and they can replicate roles, and I don't know. I don't like it.
Yeah,
I don't like it.
I'm concerned too, but it's here, and half of me wants to be an old fuddy-duddy. The other half of me is like, this is a new tool. Planners are going to embrace this. We have to be careful what we embrace. Sean, that's exactly what I was looking for. Was how's it going to hit someone, a colleague's opinion about this stuff. So thank you very much for your input. That's very, very helpful. Getting back to cite the source, we were advised yesterday from the APA, cite the source, whether it's human intelligence or AI creating the imagery or the text-based narrative. But the bottom line is whatever we use on the ChatGPT for text-based, I tested it a few weeks ago and I said, what is economic development? And it kept adding terms and adding terms. And it saves a lot of time when you're generating narrative on the page, but then the author, the writer, still has to go back and check all the terms and verify. So it saved me a lot of typing because I'm not a touch typist, but you still have to verify your data. So thank you for your time. I appreciate that, all of you. And Mr. Chairman, I'd love to give the microphone back to you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Glenn.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add very briefly to that, Christopher Monroe from Hubbardston. I have a couple examples of where it's been really super helpful. And one of the examples is we've been working on a rural opportunity overlay, and we've been trying to make some of the allowable uses broad, but not too broad. And we got back a note from Karen and her team who's been working on this with us, like, hey, you should really think about like what could fall in under this. And we sat around as a committee and we thought about it for a while, and ultimately like how could somebody abuse this? So we're like, we should ask ChatGPT this question. So we went in and it's like, well, what are services that are supportive of agriculture? And it gave us a list of about 45 that we would have never thought of on our own. The other place where it was really super helpful is we used it to check some of the aspects of our open space plan, and it picked up on the fact that we don't have a lot of available bathrooms in town, and that if we have a lot of people out using the trails and biking around, that we have a shortage of public restrooms. And that went through 3 committees and not a single human picked up on that. And it was one of the first suggestions it came out with. So there are definitely some some good use cases for using it as a thinking tool.
Thank you, Chris. Shall we have the agenda again, Jason? Okay, we go to item 6.2, conference reports. The first one was the Brownfields Conference held in Detroit. We have a report
Jason.
from Ryan Doherty.
Yeah, Jason, if you could just do me a favor, if you could pull up Ryan's report and then put mine on deck just to pull it up. So thank you very much, Jason. So these are the reports. They're online. They were uploaded on Tuesday for download in the handout section for tonight's meeting. So I'm not going to go over this. Ryan and Karen attended this Brownfields conference in Detroit. Karen's report is forthcoming. She's on vacation this week, so let's give her a break. She works very hard for all of us. And if you want to just minimize that, please, Jason, and just go to my other report for the. So I attended a conference on October. It was just a few days ago. Last week, I think it was Thursday or Friday, on International Economic Development Council, and tonight's October 5th, but it was held, I think, last week, and it was for targeted to economic development organizations, or EDOs, of which we are one. We don't deal with the marketing and attraction of properties, but you have to understand what redevelopment authorities and economic development and industrial corporations and the private sector does to attract industry to an area or help it grow in an area. We have to understand what they do on that side so we can understand the planning side, the zoning side, because they complement one another. So that's a report. I encourage you to read it. These are the highlights of about, it was about a 5 or 6 hour thing with about eight or 7 or 10 PowerPoints and 8 or 7, about 8 or 9, speakers. They were all very good. So I encourage you to read those. I won't bore you with the time tonight because you can all read those at your leisure. Thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman. I think if we go back to the agenda, I think that concludes my admin reports. Maybe this one's something else. I didn't have anything else under other. And then we can go into department updates if you want, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly. Thank you, Glenn.
Okay, very quickly, and I want to turn the gavel and the microphone over to Jason.
A question, please?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, Peter.
Yeah, no, it's all right. Yeah, and I was late to the meeting. I apologize, everyone. Yeah, real quickly on the that conference out there, I saw PFAS was, I guess, a topic. Any emerging news on that? That's certainly a big issue, certainly in our community, and I know a lot of other communities have been impacted by that in terms of resources to address it.
I think we'd have to read Ryan's report, read Karen's report, and ask them to comment that on the next meeting, or send them an email and ask them to get back to you, Peter. I don't know if there's new information on PFAS. I just know it's, it's wrangling its way through, I know, legislative bodies to try to get funding to help communities. Anecdotally, I know the town of Princeton Fire Department put out 90 fires or so with foam, and it's in their private wells, and that every town is dealing with that now. Hang on, I got to tell Alexa to stop. Alexa, stop. That's an example of generative AI, folks. Alexa interrupting your speakers. Time. Long story short, Peter, let's get back to you on that, and we'll see.
That's fine.
Thank you. I do want to turn the mic to Jason in 2 seconds. So we do. I'm gonna say something on behalf of everybody in public sector, not just on the payroll at MRPC, but any of that it has to do quarterly reports or monthly reports. When you get a grant, where you have a contract with a state or a federal government, an entity, public entity, and we have to generate volumes of information. Which bluntly, when you can't find enough people to do the job in this era. We all know what's going on nationally. We just ramped up with staff. I'd like to have our people focus more on delivering services and meeting what we have to do for contracts, requirements for quarterly reporting and so on. But then we also do a quarterly reporting for the planning commissioners, and we're going to do the same thing. What I'd like to do is see us move to an online through our MR Mapper, Montezuma Region Mapper, and we're alpha testing it now. Jason's going to show you what it looks like. And then by the January meeting, we want to include, we have planning development data tonight. We want to get the transportation data uploaded for the January meeting. And then by let's call that a beta test, and let's call it full implementation by the April meeting. And we want to have you have a map that Jason's going to explain. You click on your town, you do a pull down, and you find out what's going on. Jason, that's my segue to you, sir. Would you take it over?
Sure. I'm really just going to show you in like 2 minutes, super fast, but essentially this is our basic Mr. Mapper interface. I've left a bunch of tools up here that can be used if you want to. You can add data and all that fun stuff. If anybody has any questions on the use and functionality of Mr. Mapper, please feel free to reach out to me. But the theory is that on our main website, mrpc.org, under the About section, there would be a link there, and then there would be a link posted on the meeting notice for people to access this project. That just basically lists all the current projects. So right now, like Glenn said, we're in an alpha testing. There's a lot of things that are going to change about this, like these tiny little circles are going to be much bigger. You know, maybe the labels are a little bit bigger. Maybe instead of having an orthophoto background, we go with a white background so that things make more sense. They, you know, they pop out a little bit better. But essentially, there's going to be, excuse me, 2 ways that you can access the information. You can click on a particular community and say, okay, Westminster, this is the contract number, project name, little description, who the contact is, what the status of that contract is, which department is involved. And then if there's any attachments, say that was a project and there's a draft report available, the planners can upload that draft report there, and you can click on that and download and print, read, review that, that report. If there are multiple, so like if we say we go into Templeton, you'll see it says 1 of 3. So you have all the information right here, and then you can just scroll through to see the 3 projects. So we have a hazard mitigation plan, MBI digital equity planning, as well as Templeton Green Communities. You can see that down here, there are MRPC projects. So we have 10 of those listed. And then there's also an other, and this is for a Growing Places conference. You can also use the identify tool to click on a particular community. So if you click on Templeton, it pulls up all 3 projects there. You know what the gist of the project is. You know, you can see if there's any attachments associated with it, and who the contact information, so you can reach out accordingly. And that's basically it. You know, the look and feel is gonna be a tiny bit different, and we're gonna basically just populate it with all the rest of the contracts, and then as necessary, we'll update that information. And that way it'll always be readily available if anybody is looking for information about what projects are going on in your community.
Okay, thank you, Jason.
Mr. Chair.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. Jeff Tillotson from here. Question or suggestion?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm looking at this. This is awesome. Honestly, this is one of those things where, you know, you get thinking about something that may have happened. You're not sure where it is. Are the chances, any chance that when you click on the dot, you could have a % completed, or even an expected completion date for a contract?
Yeah, I mean, we can basically put anything in there. So that's really a question. I'm just the monkey that sits behind the keyboard and punches things and makes it all happen. So that's Glenn and Karen. They say, hey, we'd like to put this in there. So I'm sure we could put like a, you know, estimated completion date, or, you know, contract end date, or yeah, I'm sure we could add something like that in there.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing like we sit in planning board meetings, and we know what DLTA is going on somewhere else in town, and it takes us, you know, 2 phone calls and 3 emails to get that information. This would be the kind of thing where I think it would be, and it's not putting people's feet to the fire, Glenn. It's more like, when can we have an expectation of it getting done? Because we're looking forward, you know, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months in our world of going for more grants and doing our planning. So that'd be very helpful. Thank you very much if you consider it. Thanks.
I'm not considering it. We will put it in. It's just that simple. That information should be in. This will grow, and that's why I said earlier, let's call this an alpha. Let's call January a beta. Let's call April a rollout, and let's get 6 to 9 months of input, and maybe send out a Survey Monkey survey. The top 10 things you'd like to see in this, give you a couple visual cues or something. So putting the date, the amount, anything like that, the source, funding source.
There's some important information, but it's just from the standpoint of, you know, I know the select board's meeting on something, or the planning board's meeting on something, or DPW is looking at something. We're waiting for the data because we're also trying to get moving forward. And another question, Is Null, is that the new name for Devon's? Excuse me.
So I actually noticed this a little while ago when I was pulling it up, and I think I just labeled the wrong field so that it came up as null, because you'll see like we don't have any projects in Fitchburg, so it's not labeled. I think I used the wrong field to label and didn't realize it until a little while ago.
So it's not how I feel right now. It's actually a mistake, huh?
Yeah.
It's right next to void.
And if anybody has any like additional comments, or if you'd like to see other fields in there or whatever, you know, that green's bothering me, I don't know, just shoot me an email and we can compile all that. And then when we, you know, start discussing this again with the admin and the planners, we could try to tweak things as necessary.
This is great. This is great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jason.
Yep.
Any other comments? We'll find this link on MRPC, or do we have to ask you for
Yeah.
it?
Once we've completed, once it's, you know, finished and ready, it'll be on the MRPC website, probably under the about heading. It'll say, you know, current projects or something, and the link will just bring you right to the application.
Are you looking for anyone to do test use of it?
Sure. I mean, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I think
Yeah,
what we'll
when we
do
get a
is,
little further involved in the process, we'll ask for multiple, you know, who wants to send this link out to play around with it and ask some questions and whatever. Yeah.
yeah, this is great idea, great comments all. And thanks, Roger, for that. So it's Jason, Brett, Karen, you know, and any other MRPC staff internally, everybody. I want to hear from all the staff, right? And then let's come up with a schedule. Like, okay, well, gee, you know, maybe the first time to roll this out because of holidays and stuff is January 2nd and get input. Well, maybe it's, you know, November 5th. I don't know yet. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. But if we can roll it out a little bit before the holidays to get input, make it a little bit better for January, and then make it final for April. You know, so internally we'll come up with a schedule. I think then what we would do is then we would roll out an alpha tested, you know, link and say, please comment. And these comments, you know, Jeff and Roger and Peter and, you know, and Harriet and Molaire and Curly, just give us comments, and let's make this purposeful, so that I can achieve my goal, honestly, of saying, okay, planners who do quarterly reporting, just take snippets out of the quarterly report you do anyway, copy and paste them into the spreadsheet. You're done in 15 minutes. Jason says something he can populate on Mr. Mapper. It gets information out on probably a weekly basis, not just a quarterly basis. People can just copy and paste anytime. And then, you know, you can look at this probably, maybe it's every 30 days we really update it internally. But let's have a schedule and then get it out there. Awesome.
Okay, we'll move on into item 7.1, geographic information systems. Is there any update on that, Jason?
Yeah, I have no new updates at this time.
7.2, planning and development. Glenn, is there anyone here to update that?
No, but if Karen had wanted me to say something, she would have asked me to say something before. And honestly, I really wanted to leave her alone. She's visiting family, and she actually didn't take her laptop. She's actually not working on a vacation, in which she does a lot. So I'm really glad she disconnected, and I'd like to give her a break and her department a break. But I know they're all working very hard. I do want to say on their behalf that, you know, they did a great job in Ashburnham last week, presenting the first of like 4 public meetings for the next 4 or 5 months on master planning. So they're working hard, folks. They really, really are. They have a lot to do, and deadlines are important to all of us, and they're really trying to make them all. And I got to tell you, you know, we just staffed up. We just found a couple people. We have a couple full-time people, and Joe Boyle and Tracy Murphy now. But we've got a backlog, and we are really desperately working through it. So please understand that. No specific report for planning development, but I know that they're working very hard. So thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you, Glenn. Next item, 7.3, transit and transportation. Brad, do you have an update for us?
Just a couple of things. We've started our next program year, begins October 1st. It follows the federal fiscal year. So we're into our new program year with different tasks that we'll be working on upcoming. The contract is for about 937,000, I believe, in that ballpark. That's planning and FTA funds for the year. The other item is the Safe Streets for All grant that we were awarded. We put out an RFP for consultants services to work on that grant. It is still out and available. It's available through our website, as well as should be on Combis and the state goods and services site. We've had a couple of questions come in from some consultants. We've posted those on our website also. We hope to get things, the deadline is coming up, I think October 23rd, and we'll be reviewing all the proposals, and hopefully we can get someone sometime in November, hopefully early November, and begin that process of beginning the Safe Streets for All grant to develop a safety action plan for the entire region. We're putting a 24-month timeframe on it, but we'll be reaching out to other communities to start getting them on board to start working with us on that plan.
Okay, thank you, Brad.
You're welcome.
Any questions for Brad? Okay, we'll move on to next item. Item 8, new business. Is there any new business from those in attendance? Don't see any hands up. So I assume there's no new business. The next item is, I see that we're quite a bit ahead of time on that. So, Guy, do you have something?
I was just going to move to adjourn.
Oh, okay. I
We can
thought we'd
discuss
wait
it
a
for
little
most.
bit.
We can discuss it for most of an hour if you want.
I think we should. Yeah.
Second, Jeff Tillotson from Mayor seconds the motion.
Oh, okay.
Second. Okay. Well, do I need to do a roll call on this, Glenn? Glenn?
Sorry, I had an internet delay problem. I apologize.
Do I need to do a roll call on the motion to adjourn?
I think it's prudent.
Prudent. Okay, we will do that. I hear a motion to adjourn. It's been seconded.
I'll
Do a roll
second that.
call. Okay, thank you. Guy Corbizero. He's muted.
He's already gone.
Take that as he abstains. Laura Schifrin.
Yes, and thank you for doing that
Oh,
tonight.
you're welcome, Laura. I'm glad you're feeling better. At least able to attend. That's great. Kirsten Newman.
Aye.
Alan Pease.
Aye.
Jeff Tillotson.
Jeff Tillotson, aye.
Amanda Reed.
Aye.
Stacia Donahue.
Aye.
Christopher Monroe.
Aye.
Myself, Roger Hoyt, aye. Bob Schwartz.
Aye.
Peter Cunningham.
Cunningham, aye.
Thank you all and good night. We will see you all November 9th. It's the second Thursday because the first Thursday is too close to the end of the month to have reports prepared, so it will be November 9th. Thank you all. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, all.